What about the National Guard, sir?
Almost all the first response platoons were massacred, and the high alert units will need another 8 hours. We are to rendezvous with the only first response group still holding out at the Toll Plaza.
Jesus. Is there any air support?
First bird should be in the area in around 40 minutes.
Hey, I'm Dan Adams, Editor-in-Chief of IGN-PC. We're here today to talk about Active War Direct Action. It's a new RTS coming out of Eugen Systems and Atari. This is a pretty good RTS, you know. It's not going to change anything dramatically. It's not going to be anything that you haven't seen before in a lot of ways. But that's actually okay from time to time. This is a pretty traditional RTS that tries some new things and is successful in some new things, and actually harkens back to the old days of Command & Conquer Red Alert due to some live-action cutscenes that aren't exactly brilliant, but tend to be pretty entertaining anyway. Overall, this is a pretty good package. Anybody that's played Command & Conquer Generals will note some pretty striking similarities, just pretty much because of the modern combat setting. There's a lot of units that kind of harken back to Generals, but this tends to have a more grounded, not quite as fantastic approach to some of the new technology. There are a couple of things like some mechanized warrior suits, but besides that, most everything is pretty traditional. And while I couldn't help feel this bit of repetition, I still had a good deal of fun with the game. Missions are designed pretty well, pacing was really good, there's a lot of selection of units available, and some of them had multiple uses as well. And combat was exciting enough because there were some really great visuals and some good sound, and I never got bored while playing the game. As I said, Active War is definitely a traditional real-time strategy game, but there are a couple of things that set it apart. First is the way resources are handled. The first type of resource is oil. You'll just go and set up a derrick and then build a refinery, and your trucks will be driving from the derrick to the refinery and you'll get your money that way. The second type is definitely more suitable for the city settings that are found throughout the game, because it has players generating cash by taking over a bank building and garrisoning troops inside. So you're basically siphoning cash from the bank while they're in there. The challenge here is that when you take the building, you have to make sure you defend it well, because even though you have troops garrisoned inside, those troops are pretty vulnerable. Enemy infantry can enter the building and fight them on the inside and take over if they have enough infantry. And at the same time, units can come from the outside and kick the crap out of the building itself in order to take over and kill the men inside. Like, you can just blow the hell out of the building with rockets or whatever, and the guys inside will still die. Lastly, money can be earned through capturing prisoners. Out on the battlefield, infantry or vehicle pilots will often be wounded and left without a vehicle. At that point, your own infantry can go and capture them and use them as a prisoner of war. You'll get an immediate cash bonus of $500 for capturing one of these guys. Once you do capture them, they get transferred to a hospital or a prison or one of these buildings, and you actually gain cash over time as well. So it's good to capture these guys and have them as a constant money source. And capturing these guys makes the game pretty interesting, because you don't want to just leave them lying around for your enemy to capture, because they'll get money from it, and you'll lose some potential money as well. It's pretty frustrating to have your opponent capture your guys in multiplayer, just sitting there like, I just lost more money and he just gained more money. That really sucks. The other thing that makes Active War especially interesting and sometimes frustrating are the incredibly dense and detailed city settings. Not only do these settings look really, really good, but they provide some different challenges. You'll fight in San Francisco, which looks like San Francisco. You'll fight in Washington, D.C., that looks like Washington, D.C. But the big part of this is that these close quarter battles are something that, aren't really done in a lot of RTS games very well. And because you can actually enter any of the buildings, any of the houses, any of the office buildings in Active War, infantry becomes a much higher priority. So they'll actually be useful later in the game, because you can go and garrison a building at any time and actually garrison a street with rocket launchers and machine guns and just wait for a convoy to roll down, and your guys will open up and blow them to hell. But the only problem with these really dense environments is that it can be really tricky to see what's happening inside. You have to really position the camera around, because it's hard to get targets and tell your units to go specific places when you have all these big buildings in the way. It's not a huge problem, but it was a problem a few times for me. And aside from being fun for combat, these cities are really gorgeous. I mean, they've modeled some really beautiful cities. San Francisco looks great. Washington, D.C. is pretty amazing, because they modeled the Capitol building And they modeled the White House very well. I mean, it's pretty bizarre wandering up the mall with all these heavily armed troops just going to attack the Capitol, which has been taken over by enemies, you know. It's hard to believe that these terrorist forces would be able to transport so many troops into the United States and just set up camp in the nation's capital and in San Francisco, and without too much of a fight, so that you're the only one that can go back and save the world.
Ready, take cover! We've got critical breaching the structure now!
And the story itself, regardless of whether you like it or not, is presented in an interesting way. You'll remember Command & Conquer Red Alert and their live-action cutscenes. They were pretty corny, but they were pretty entertaining. Act of War does the same thing here. They've put a lot of effort into making these cutscenes. There's pretty mixed results. Some of the acting isn't so bad. Some of it is really atrocious. The Russian hero guy, or Russian villain guy, is really amazingly bad. He's got a horrible accent, and his facial expressions are laughable. The problem here is, you know, unlike Red Alert 2, where you can tell it's supposed to be camp value, this doesn't really have quite the camp value that did. So you're sitting there like, you know, these guys are trying to be serious, and they're just not being very successful at it. You know, even though they're not that great, you're going to have a good time watching them.
Chamberlain, wait!
No time, sir. We gotta get you out of here now.
On the other hand, they also have some in-game cutscenes that are pretty action-packed and fun. You know, it's just kind of a camera rolling through the action to start off a level or to show something happening in a different part of the city, and that's pretty fun. Those are done well. As I said before, Act of War Direct Action is a really solid gaming package. The single-player game definitely could have been longer. Veteran RTS players are going to want to mark it all the way up to the hardest setting on this. But multiplayer and skirmish will definitely extend the life of the game, as you know, units are balanced pretty well. There were some things that I thought weren't balanced well originally, and then I realized after the computer kicked my ass a couple of times that they were balanced a little better than I thought. But the game is actually very decent and very good. I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. As I said, the cutscenes are a little bit wonky, as is the story, but you know, those are pretty forgivable in this case. But really the bottom line here is that real-time strategy fans that are looking for something more traditional should like what they find here.
Our troops are here. Last communication with the 1st Armored Recon Battalion was here in this derelict suburb. But that was 2 hours ago.
Jefferson, we need to cross the bridge and see if we can rally those troops. We won't be able to take control of the highway without them.